Hello and welcome to BrAInstorm, powered by STX Next. We always talk about all things AI, and because AI and data go hand in hand, today I'm joined by two true experts in the field of data, Sagar Suri with Rapid7 and Tomasz Jędrośka with STX Next. And together we will talk about all things data, really, and we will talk about data in the space of cybersecurity, especially. So without further ado, I'm just going to get started with something super simple because you both work with data every day. What is data? And why is everyone talking about it?
Yeah, sure. Let me start, if I may. So, from the brief introduction perspective, my name is Tomasz Jędrośka. I'm heading the data engineering unit within STX in IT for, mostly 20 years in the outsourcing setup. Usually, predominantly, I'm leading the data and software engineering teams for finance, for telco, but not only, also sometimes in a very small startup setup. Going, Paulina, to your question, actually, I would describe it in a way that we are trying to describe the surrounding world with the data, right? And since nowadays the world is not only the real world but also the virtual one, from the start of the internet era, it started to grow bigger and bigger. So we know that it's not only a text content, it's also video, it's also podcasts, whole metadata around it. So who is listening to what, who is clicking where, and this is growing and growing. And now with AI and especially Gen AI, on top of it all, it's actually taking the growing amount of data, processing it further, and generating even more new content. So I think that's what all the hype is about. But Sagar, to you, please. Share your thoughts.
I think when you ask what is data, it's definitely a loaded question, and it kind of like depends who you ask, right? Like if you were to ask, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Tomek, but say you were to ask it like a technologist, as Tomek or myself, we might respond to that and say, oh, you can have unstructured data, which, as Tomek was mentioning, like could be media, could be your favorite song on your laptop that's converted into numbers or samples. You could also have structured data, which is, maybe the data community is going to slap me on the wrist for giving this example, but I'll give it just to make sure I'm reaching the entire audience, like a table in an Excel file, right? Where you have rows and columns, and it's really easy to do analytics on top of it. But then, Paulina, you might go and ask like a real estate architect, what is data? And they might respond back and say, well, it's a series of measurements that ensures that I'm like building a sturdy house or commercial building. So it kind of just depends, I guess, to answer that question. And then in terms of your question around like, why is everybody talking about it? I think, Tomek, you nailed it. I'll also add like data is currency. If we're being honest, I think for decades we've made money using data. If I'm wearing my cybersecurity hat as well a little bit, like we have on the wrong side of the fence, we have like bad actors who are taking your data and selling it on the dark web or trying to make money off of it via ransomware. And I guess I'll also add, like, we also have these ebbs and flows in technological advancements, like Gen AI, as Tomek was referencing, that sort of like put it into like into like the news and keep it front of mind, even though like subconsciously we're using data all the time. So
I guess data is the new oil, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that was like a Forbes article or something back in the day. But yeah, with AI and now like the agentic AI, it's like we're all thinking about it again.
Yeah, when asking that question, I said that it would be simple, but it turns out it's not that simple at all. But you've addressed it perfectly. So now I'm curious to hear what kind of headaches and joys, obviously, it causes to you daily because you both work with data every day. So, Sagar, I'm going to come to you first. Could you tell us a little bit more about your role as the data and analytics director at Rapid7, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll quickly just explain Rapid7 as well. So Rapid7 is it's a cloud-based security solutions company. So they're offering detection and response, vulnerability management, cloud security surface command, aimed at ensuring a secure future for our customers. My role in that organization, as you mentioned, is the director of data and analytics. And so what does that entail? A few different things. So we have like data engineering and our telemetry data teams, which are focused on taking all of this data that we have, this rich data that Rapid7 has access to, and trying to make it really easy for our internal employees to harness that data, comb through it, combine it, keep it credible so people trust it, so that Rapid7 can make decisions off of it. On the other side of the fence, we have like the analytics teams, which are focused on enabling all of our different analytics teams to go do that, to with the tooling to go do that, whether it's visualization tooling, whether it's tooling that helps you build analytical data models. We have like a go-to-market analytics team and a finance analytics team. We have these different pockets of analytics. Let's make sure that they have what they need. And then we also have sort of a lean into product analytics as well. So I mentioned all the different kind of offerings that Rapid7 has. We want to make sure that we're making product-based decisions, empirical-based decisions, I guess, as we evolve our products. So trying to drive that mission.
How about you, Tomasz?
How about me? Well, working, or rather heading the data engineering unit at STX Next involves wearing many hats, I would say. Sometimes the amount of hats causes a bit of a headache. But predominantly I'm a people manager, so obviously I need to run the whole show, make sure that the engineers grow as engineers, get new skill set, their skill set is aligned to what they actually fancy doing, and what customers need. Second thing is, obviously I'm very often, several times a week, attend the pre-sales calls with my customers, listening to their stories, trying to ideate together with them. And that leads me to the next hat, which is sort of a software / data architect person or persona. So helping the customers ideate the perfect software data landscape for their particular needs. Because as I've mentioned before, there are startup customers which, look at the smaller landscapes usually. Not always. There are corporate landscapes more focused on data governance and topics like that. And we as a service vendor need to actually align to the particular needs. So my role is being a customer-centric person, being the advocate of their ROI, making sure that we're actually delivering the value they need. So that's in a nutshell.
And there are so many other data-related jobs one can take up. So you have data engineers like yourself, Tomasz, you have data architects, data ops, just to name a few, and probably more than I haven't even thought about. So could you briefly try to explain these roles and how they intersect?
Yeah, sure. Although a small disclaimer here that it largely depends on the company, whether it's a product-based company or a service-based or a vendor like ourselves. I would say I would focus on the project timeline when trying to explain this, because usually when we're entering an engagement with the customers, data architects or software architects come into play. So they help, as mentioned before, they help customers to ideate the perfect landscape and how the whole solution should look like. So they are sketching it on a piece of virtual paper. Then usually there are data engineers who coin this into reality, into databases, data warehouses, pipelines that are connecting one with another. There are data analysts or BI, meaning business intelligence developers, who usually are closer to the customers, trying to understand what insights they are looking to get from their pieces of data. So figuring out trends, drawing a nice dashboards or reports for the sake of the business stakeholders. So that's that. Last role I think worth mentioning is some sort of a data operations. So that's a role I would say close to the DevOps in their regular software development, making sure all the data related processes are automated, the validation is in place in this whole machinery and happens automatically. There is monitoring, alerting should something bad happening in the data pipelines. So these roles come to my mind. Sagar, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like it is, I feel like that's the general kind of delineation between the roles, but very blurry from one organization to the next. You see like analytics engineers as a concept, which is sort of a blend between data engineer and data analyst. I always think of them as like full stack. Even within data engineering, you have different flavors of data engineers. So you might have like software engineering leaning data engineers who are focused more on larger data. Maybe they're dealing with petabytes of data and figuring out how to process that in a timely fashion. Maybe they're dealing more with technical pipelines that are, maybe like near real-time streaming pipelines. And then you might have a different flavor of data engineer, which is more analytics leaning. Maybe spending more of their time on low-code tooling, like something like a Fivetran, or getting their hands a little bit muddy on the analytic models. And then I guess the last comment I have on Tomasz, your comments about the architects. I think architects are nice. I haven't always had the luxury of having an architect, so sometimes you'll see also like leads and staff engineers kind of plug.
I'm happy to join your team. Well,
yeah, come on over.
Yes.
We'd love to have you.
Smooth. Very smooth. Okay, so lots and lots of great careers to explore. Thank you for that overview. And actually, I'm going to stay with you, Sagar, because I would like to start slowly heading towards what I'm guessing is one of the topics you talk about a lot. Rapid7 is a security company after all. And one of the first things that one can read on your website is, at Rapid7, we believe that there is no place for silos when it comes to security. So in that context, what was it like scaling a data organization in the cybersecurity space?
Yeah, great question. I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to stand up data programs in a few different industries. I don't think I would be going out on a limb by saying cyber was probably the most challenging out of the bunch. You can't sell security unless you show that you've secured customer zero, which is yourself. So in data engineering and analytics, where part of your responsibility is, like I mentioned earlier, centralizing all of this data into one single place. Understandably, our InfoSec teams are quite critical about how we do that. So it is pretty like task oriented, much more task oriented, I guess, than past organizations. So, we review like every data point that comes in to our central enterprise data platform is reviewed. And we're starting to look and leverage technologies that do that in an automated fashion, but I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of being able to 100% rely on those automatic processes. So right now, like there is a level of manual review on like every data point that comes in. There's tagging on every data set. So we do everything we can possibly do to be secure, and then we even go beyond that. There was a CrowdStrike compromise last year, and we want to make sure the risk of something like that happening to us obviously is as minimal as we can make it. So there's also lots of internal reporting and initiatives that we really invest in to ensure that we're continuously improving our security posture.
And I know that real-time data is very important in all areas of the business, really, but absolutely critical in cybersecurity. So could you walk us through why that is, and how does having real-time fresh data help us maybe identify threats faster?
Sagar, I guess. Well, I can talk about real-time data long time for the areas of business like, I don't know, finance or telco, but in the area of cybersecurity, well, you're the expert, plus you're our guest, so I would defer to you.
Yeah, very kind of you. I will definitely get some thoughts on this, and then Tomasz, obviously feel free to add or follow up with any questions. Yeah, I think we have like terms like staleness and freshness and timeliness, and these can be different SLAs that you set. I think if we're thinking about staleness, to me, that's like your data is not as fresh as you expect it to be. And that can mean different things depending on how you're delivering that data. So you might have streaming data pipelines, which means like, hey, as soon as this piece of data is created, I want to send it from point A to point B. So I want to get it there in like very close to real time. If that data is not being delivered from point A to point B in like seconds, now that's stale. You have a different a means of delivering data from point A to point B, which could be like batch jobs. So that might, if I'm trying to describe that as something like, hey, we're creating a lot of data in whatever source system and we're letting it build up. And then we're scheduling some type of movement of that data, maybe once an hour, once every 30 minutes. And we're just taking like a batch of those data points and moving them from point A to point B. And maybe if that's once an hour and point B doesn't have data like more recent than like 2 or 3 hours, that's also stale, right? So it can have implications, of course, like the obvious ones from a cybersecurity lens. We're trying to catch vulnerabilities and exposures. The industry calls them CVEs, common vulnerabilities and exposures. And we want to act quickly to respond to those, right? So if the data is stale going from point A to point B, we can't act as quickly as we want to, and that can leave someone open with an exposure and vulnerable to an attack, right? For a longer period of time. Say like an unknown IP address is found in the logs, or worse, like a known bad actor IP is found in the logs. To be able to catch that quickly.
If I just may, I think it's very similar to the domains like finance and, for example, anti-money laundering, right? So if you don't have the freshest information about the transactions which are happening in the system, or some of them are stale, you can really make some bad calls there and jeopardize your system. So, well, I guess in every single domain and kind of business that is prone to the real-time events, it's extremely important to have some sort of observability like that and monitor whether your pieces of data are stale or aren't stale, actually.
Yeah. Like you have to measure those things. So for example, we measure, from the time that a piece of information is detected in a log, how quickly does it take us to patch up that information and then send that in via an alert. That turnaround time should be very quick, right? And then even internally, like if we're talking, Tomasz, if you're mentioning observability, like even internally, I think that's more of like hey, how do we make sure that we're supporting our customers as best as we can? But even internally, I think that observability is equally critical for sort of our decision making internally, I guess. Like we process 14 trillion telemetry events every single day internally. And that could be information about like what scans were run by our agents on customer systems. What did a user do in our SaaS tool? Kind of the product usage efficacy. Understanding if like we have a feature release and that's impacting a customer potentially negatively, or if it's working, right? So the longer it takes to generate those insights, the higher the risk of there's compromise, but also like other types of customer impacts too.
You both touched on a couple of important points. So just to sum them up, how do we prevent such vulnerabilities specifically?
So I think I'll kind of break down the answer into two parts. Like if we think about external facing products and infrastructure, and then like our internal like DE analytics pipelines. On the external pipelines and facing products, there's a lot of, I think, strategies you can pursue, right? So we do things like tracing, which is a message getting from point A to point B? And then how quickly is a message getting from point A to point B? We measure uptime of our services. So we have a commitment to our customers to maintain a certain level of uptime. And we have a pretty robust like enterprise risk management program here where we're setting targets on some of these things so that we're not just monitoring them, but we're continuously improving. And then on the internal like data engineering analytics pipelines, you have like open source libraries out there, like Great Expectations. You can buy products like a Monte Carlo to monitor what your data quality is. Maybe you're using a tool like DBT, which does pretty popular tool for building pipelines, and it makes it really easy to set up tests. You can integrate the results of those tests with visualization tools. So, if you have a dashboard in, say, a Tableau, that Tableau dashboard can show, hey, FYI, there's a data quality problem with the underlying data of this dashboard. And then a couple other things that come to mind, like response SLAs. So like making sure when something happens, you're responding to the right people as quickly as possible. I think there's opportunities as well to like create self-service for folks who are consuming that data. I mentioned the Tableau example earlier, but even external customer facing, if you're using certain tools, you probably have been on that tool site and they have some type of like status page that'll let you know if there is some product problem.
No, I guess I would rather attack this topic from another angle. So what I've usually seen mostly in the enterprises, so especially when software development cycle was a bit detached from data deployment life cycle. So, the whole data platform had its own release cycle. I've noticed, and I'm a big fan of a multi-layered data validation. You've mentioned DBT or Great Expectations. That's actually the tools that my teams were usually using on the lowest possible level. But there is a big value in using them because actually those calculations, especially in the enterprise grade environment, one recalculation could have cost, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. So, that's never insignificant, right? And I would say doing those very simple validations, like checking if they're, doing null checks, doing histogram analysis of particular kinds of values, checking the last change, so preventing staleness, as you said before, detecting outliers, actually saved my customers for paying those hefty bills. And they usually fulfill the 80-20 rule, in my opinion. Obviously, later on, there can be further stages, also including manual checks and doing some sort of go, no-go reports for the formal deployment of the data environment. But that's always tailored. That's always needs to be considered case by case. I would say, again, I'm a big fan of doing this multi-layered approach, addressing 80-20, and then you can definitely get rid of the most challenging issues that you have there.
I love that. Might have to steal some of your ideas or borrow some of your ideas.
They are. Yeah. Now you're teasing with me.
Or we'll just hire you on board, right?
Tomasz, considering your background, I'm very curious what you will have to say about this one. So in this context, and especially in high-stakes environments, are you in favor of automation, manual oversight, or maybe a combination of both?
Yeah, I think my answer would be a summary of what we've, together with Sagar, said before. So in an environment, if I imagine the highest possible stake environment I've been into, this was probably either a telco data centers, so set of 20 data centers, or, for example, calculating company default risk at investment banks. So there were tens to 100,000 messages flying back and forth each minute in one data center. So you can imagine that's definitely too fast and too much for a human being to process. So a huge chunk of this monitoring and alerting system needs to be done automatically. However, there are always either software malfunctions or those ambiguous cases. Now, especially with Gen AI, I think they will be even more popular because of hallucinations, for example. So in the end, I think there usually should be a human being to decide in those ambiguous cases. So yeah, again, 80-20. I'll probably repeat that a lot. Let's cover what we need to the automation, the more blurry, gray area cases leave to humans. Sagar, any opinions here?
Yeah, I think detection feels a little bit simpler to automate. The response is the more difficult part, like isolating the root cause and then actually squashing that bug or whatever the root cause issue is, throwing resources at your containers, whatever. That's still like a pretty big challenge and quite time consuming. Maybe that's an agentic AI opportunity, or as we approach a world where AI can be more independent, can we be smarter about using the past to go and fix the future? And that's like a data pipeline problem, I guess. It's also like a cybersecurity problem, just continuing to bring this back to cybersecurity. We have security operations centers, we call them SOCs. And those SOCs are effectively analysts that are offering round the clock, like 24/7 support to customers to detect and respond to incidents. And it's a race right now to figure out how to respond as quickly as possible, because it even in the cybersecurity space, it's not obvious and quick to go and figure out, okay, why has this incident been detected? What am I supposed to do about it?
Yeah, and I guess there always might be a malicious use case with Gen AI, which we've noticed, I think, quite a lot nowadays, right?
Yeah. I mean, this whole Gen AI movement is introduced an entirely new world of ways to attack. So plenty of work to be done in this space.
Plenty of new business for you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I guess another big decision that companies must make is around whether to build your own data solutions versus buy them from a vendor. So what should companies keep in mind when making that call?
Yeah, I can start with this one. So I think, yeah, it's a decision point we've run into quite a bit here and in the past experiences. I think things to consider. So, firstly, do you have resources and the time to actually build something yourself? I think that's the obvious one. If it's a critical use case, whatever it is that you're building, like, do you have the global geo redundancy and support that's required to keep that running 24 hours a day? Budget, right? If you're going to go buy something, do you have money to go and buy that? I think another one that's less obvious, but it might be informational, is like, if you, in a current world where we all have some dependency on cloud providers and probably some type of contract with the cloud provider, there's this arms race going on, right, between AWS and Google and Microsoft to offer as many diversified services as possible. Does your cloud provider offer that service? And maybe you can leverage discounting from your contract, right? Or if you're using other services with that cloud provider, there's a benefit maybe to at least like a point in the column of going with the cloud provider service, because you can leverage the integrations with the other services that you're using in a simple fashion. Those are kind of the big ones I think that come to mind off the bat.
Yeah. Well, luckily for me, I'm usually a bit further from those kinds of decisions. However, well, as a technological partner, which I'm trying to be with my teams, I actually try to stand by my customers and recommend them particular solutions in their individual cases. Well, obviously taking taking advantage from the past experiences I had. So working in an outsourcing setup for many, many years probably multiplies the amount of projects I've seen, particular environments, and helps me to make such recommendations and tailored solutions for my customers. So whether buy or build, I would say, well, usually my teams are building from either already prepared building blocks or bespoke solutions. But even if the customer is buying a product, usually there is this either deployment or customization phase in which we're helping them, right? As said, taking advantage from the previous experiences, that is usually a beneficial collaboration.
Oh, a third option that also comes to mind is open source. Like we self-host like our own data catalog here. I think open source is a good option if you're conducting a POC and you want to prove out that, hey, this tool is actually going to give us a return on an investment. You could start with an open source. Yeah. And then as you prove that it's useful, maybe then you can justify putting in dollars to get whatever additional features and like fully managed solution.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, it's like buying for $0, but you still need to customize and you need to support. Well, I need to support my customers in actually getting the most value out of these open source solutions. But yeah, hey, I'm totally with you. As a huge fan of the Apache data stack. Well, not only data, but mostly. And definitely that's an option which we're very often recommending to the customers.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to like the considerations that you would have when deciding if you wanted to go with build. You know, you're going to have the resources to go and stand up that open source solution. It might be quicker than building from scratch, but you're going to still have to have the resources and the willingness to go and keep uptime up, at a certain level. And then, yeah, the open source space is just interesting right now. I think in general, like there's so many companies who are offering open source solutions. Helps them speed up development, helps with the product-led growth, right? Like Timescale Database is a good example. They used to offer a multi-node option for their open source solution, and now they stopped offering it. So now some of these vendor-locked customers are kind of being forced to go to the paid solution. I think companies are trying to like figure out how to handle this open source space. Like Redis is another company that we use for caching pretty commonly. Maybe Tomasz, you guys have used as well. They moved to a proprietary license in 2024, and they're so widely used. And then Google and AWS backed sort of a competing product, Valkey, and that became, I think, the most like favorited or starred storage system on GitHub last year. So we're actually migrating to Valkey in certain places. So yeah, very interesting time for that open source space.
Yeah, definitely. I guess with the open source is also a question of, well, I would call it customer support. So with regular bought product, you have customer support with the product vendor. Here, you need to pay attention whether there's community and documentation, which kind of serves as this customer support, so that your teams feel comfortable with this product. They feel that the operations are not jeopardized and the whole development goes smoothly. Those would be my 2 cents here.
Yeah.
And when migrating to a new data product or solution, what are some of the key considerations companies should keep in mind to make that transition smoother?
I guess like with every single smaller or bigger project in IT, I would highly recommend starting from identifying and making sure you have the stakeholders behind your back. I've too many times seen well, there's this dilemma, efficiency, being effective versus being efficient, right? So you can very quickly development something, but well, if you're efficient in delivering the wrong solution, then that's not really a good then scenario, right? So you need to have the stakeholders that focus on the problem at hand from their own perspectives, because even in one area of the organization, there would be different perspectives. You need to handle that. I think you need to secure the time of the subject matter experts for your technical team, because it's not going to end on the ideation phase. There's going to be questions on later stages, and those guys need to be available. And yeah, hey, there is also the daily routine. So good planning of resources, solid roadmap. Sagar, help me out here.
I think you nailed it, Tomasz. Maybe 80-20 between effectiveness and efficiency, would you say?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
It's become kind of a tradition of BrAInstorm that I ask my guests to grab their crystal balls or maybe tea leaves or whatever they have and try to foresee the future. So I'm going to ask you, where is the future of data headed, especially in the context of the dynamic technological advancements and AI?
Wow. Well, sorry, Paulina, I forgot to take my crystal ball from another backpack. But yeah, it seems that nowadays the future is tagged with an AI tag, right? So whether we want it or not, it's going to focus around AI. And here I'm super excited, for example, to have really quickly developed AI accelerated proofs of concepts for the customers. I've seen that working really, really smoothly. So that's an exciting opportunity with the AI. We need to, on the other hand, have this thought in mind that for now, some of the AI solutions are quite cheap, but they are cheap when we're talking about proof of concept. We need to consider the eventual cost when we're going to production, and that's one thing. And then, whether we would like to use it in the future or not, we will see. Like, time will tell. What I know for sure, when it comes to the future, if you want to utilize AI solutions and also traditional data analysis, figuring out trends, getting insights from your data and have this data-driven company, definitely need to pay attention to the data engineering. You need to pay attention to how clean your data is, because, AI and all the machine learning algorithms tend to have this bad virtue of multiplying good things, but whether there are faults in the data, they will multiply them as well. So pay attention to data quality, and that's how you're going to prepare for this future, in my mind.
Yeah. I was trying to purchase my crystal ball on Amazon Prime while Tomasz was talking, but fastest I could get was two-day delivery. So I'll try my best to answer this one. I think it's an uncertain, but it's an exciting time, I think, in data and tech. I think, one thing I hear quite often is this worry that, hey, I'm going to get replaced with AI, whether you're a developer, engineer, analyst. If you're not getting replaced, at least anytime soon, I think we already are seeing sharp jumps in productivity, but we've spoken about this a little bit earlier, like manual oversight is necessary, that 80-20. It may take less, human horsepower to deliver more, but that intervention, that manual oversight is going to persist and be required. So I don't think it's something to be scared of. I think educate yourself at a pace that's comfortable for you and just accept AI into your life. I think you'll be fine.
I kind of have a feeling that if we left the recording running, you would just talk and talk about data and you would never run out of topics. So there's definitely still a lot to unpack here, but I'm going to leave it at that for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I have to say, you both have very calming presence about yourselves, and I wonder if it's a requirement in a data or cybersecurity related job, but I certainly enjoyed it, and I enjoyed learning from you today. I'm sure our listeners did as well. So once again, thank you, and to everyone listening, thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again for the future episodes of BrAInstorm. See you soon.
See you. Thank you so much.